Hey guys, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. After I had that interview with Jason Hill, I had a chance to ask him a few random questions, and I've edited down the answers to some of the more interesting questions. And so, yeah, check it out if you're interested. I know you've been in the design field for a long time and designed several cars before Aptera and since Aptera, I think, as well. But Aptera is a little bit different, I'm imagining, than other vehicles because it has this focus on efficiency and aerodynamics. So it has to have a very specific shape. And I don't know if this is true of designers. I don't know if you're given like a carte blanche on like what the shape of the vehicle is, but with the Aptera, it has to have a certain shape. So when you got involved with Aptera, like how did that work? Did they give you a shape? Like what was your role as a designer in
Uh,
designing the Aptera?
Great. Thank you, Steve. That's a very keen observation for sure. And there's a certain amount of carte blanche to, what's available, but there was a foundational, let's say, equation. And this is the equation that Steve Fambro really, based the whole thing on, and Chris supported him on kind of upholding that shape. This shape is optimized, and we're building on the foundation of what's called a Morelli body. And the Morelli body was developed in Italy by a professor at an institute. I don't know the exact name of the institute, but he kind of optimized what a body in ground effect, meaning next to the ground, would be like for aerodynamic efficiency, and then kind of extrapolated that into what a vehicular shape might be. So this was kind of like brought and presented as the thesis, the original thesis from Steve and Chris, and then they said, what do we do with this? How do we take it to the next step? Which immediately, I mean, from a personal perspective and a design perspective, this was a fantastic challenge because you were already given boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Those boundaries were there to be explored and also given reality, right? You can't just say, well, this is it. There's no more. You have to say what are the possibilities to kind of push that shape and work those dimensions to the benefit of the ultimate end goal, which is comfort and usability. So you can dive into a little bit of the background of what the Morelli shape is and how it works in ground effect, which is very different from free stream. If you think about aerodynamics and, let's say in the aeronautical or airplane sense, where most of the time they're flying very high, they don't have any relationship to the ground. But when you get close to the ground, there's a different relationship with the ground and the air, and that becomes a fascinating journey. Personally, I had the reason I really went with kind of believing in Steve and Chris and their thesis using this shape was I had started at a very young age to appreciate aerodynamics. I remember very clearly being inspired by a couple of things that were happening in the 70s, which gives you a clue of my decades in this world.
Yeah.
And there were two things. There were human powered vehicles, and these were basically bicycles with shells that made them very aerodynamic, and they
Yeah, I
they were
remember
setting
those.
records like mad. Sorry, I've got a bug flying around,
Mhm.
um, which is another amazing thing that a tiny bug with wings can fly through this very thin fluid. I'll digress here for a moment. Think about how many natural things have developed wings on their own, right? You have birds, you have fish, you have insects. It's very interesting. So even though Aptera is wingless, that's literally its meaning, it still kind of respects the natural law. So the other thing, back to the 70s, the other thing that impressed me was the Kremer Prize, I believe that's the right name, was given in the late 70s for the first human-powered aircraft.
Mhm.
And there was a company called Aerovironment, and Dr. Paul McCready,
Mhm.
who put together a team and created a very lightweight human-powered airplane. And that just like, wow.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and then that was the Gossamer Albatross,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe the Condor. I think the Gossamer Condor was first, and then the Gossamer Albatross. And both of those things, they used materials, they used light weighting, they used aerodynamics to like the nth degree, and that set me on a certain path, which culminated at this career point of meeting Steve and Chris and taking on this assignment to like, hey, this is our shape. We want to make this really ultra efficient aerodynamic vehicle. So
So what was your thought when you first saw the shape? You're like, is that possible to turn that into a vehicle? Is it like not enough space? And I think the original Morelli shop didn't have the wheel nacelles. It just had that shape.
correct. They were kind of blended in. There's been a couple of variations of it, and there's some foundational studies that go into different directions. You know, it's been elongated into a four passenger, let's say, vehicle. But the basic thesis is how it relates to the ground and why it's a cambered body. Chris Anthony will tell you about this is what dolphins do when they're close to the bottom. They camber their body to be more efficient.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting play on nature. And Aptera has a great mission that I like to say that the future is kind of pulling Aptera forward, right? We're not breaking any rules. We're kind of more like leveling up to the established nature rules. And the efficiency play is it's a wonderful journey as a designer and to kind of figure out how to make this work, right? For the benefit of mobility.
So, um, like when you decided to put the wheel nacelles or whatever we're calling them now, um, did you want to put them closer, and did they tell you like, oh, we have to put them farther apart because of aerodynamic reasons, or?
Another great question. There's two ways to go. They either have to be very close and blended, but that leads to some other issues, or they need to be a kind of a specific distance, let's say, in order to manage the pressure of between the two bodies.
Mhm.
And it becomes a very mathematical equation, like how far should it be apart? Um, the aerodynamic part is a wonderful thing because you play off of intuition and then you test that thesis. And when we run CFD, it is fair to say that there are thousands upon thousands of calculations that take place. That doesn't necessarily mean we're doing 1,000 different versions, but we're at a state where the technology available for us to validate hypothesis is like very quick turnaround for very low investment. So that these thousands upon thousands of calculations yield results that sometimes challenge your assumptions. But that's the best part. You get to go on this journey of learning, and that's what design is. Design ultimately, and I know we're going to go to this point too. It's a collection of judgments and decisions, and you have to manage all of those things and decide which ones are in the hierarchy of importance. I love vehicles, but I love design more.
Mm.
And I kind of, again, back to meeting with Steve and Chris and seeing this challenge of Aptera. By the way, you asked the question. I did think it was possible to take it beyond what the original, concept from them was. When I sat down with them and listened to them, they had some very wonderfully optimistic and almost naive ideas. And I'm like, that's great. You know what? Let's try, because you can talk yourself out of stuff, but design is a business of optimism.
Mm.
And when you shoot for a very high goal, I mean, you can see this in the world right now. There are some people that are incredible goals, and they're like, oh, you can't do that. Watch me try.
Mhm.
Right? Because if you don't try, you're definitely not going to get there. But So that's another long answer to your question.
Okay. So the one of the things I think that you guys have to manage is like you have a design that you want, but we have to eventually make this thing manufacturable and
Mm.
has to work as a vehicle. Can you tell us some of the things that you had to compromise with or change because of uh, manufacturing reasons or engineering reasons? What are some big changes that you made, or what are the things that had to change over time?
I'm going to frame it this way because this is the belief that I wake up with every day in this process. Um, it's not necessarily change or um, when someone comes to me, especially like we have a problem, we can't make that.
Hmm.
I like to think of it as where's the opportunity to improve what you do and and also achieve what I or we want to do. This is not, let's say, my design. It is really a group effort, and the greatest respect that I can bestow upon engineering and also manufacturing process is when they are when they have an elegant solution to how things go together and it fits with the kind of the function or the ethos that we're trying to achieve, that's awesome. You know, there's a difference that I personally follow to, like there are some stylistic elements, but most of those are born after the fact when you respect the engineering and especially the elegance of the engineering. I'm going to use that word a lot. Like the elegance in engineering design cannot be underestimated. You don't want to start with the style. You want to start with the process.
Hmm.
We have found in our partner in Italy a process that allows for unbelievable elegance and efficiency. And you and everyone else is going to learn a lot more about that very soon. So the compromises, I never view them as a compromise until we get to a point where a compromise leads to two unhappy people,
Hmm.
right? Because then no one owns it. Two unhappy people after a compromise is like, well, I told you we should have done it my way. No, I told you we should have done it my way. So you don't have any learning.
Yeah.
And learning is the foundation it's the foundation of humanity. It's the foundation of mankind, right? Our knowledge is unlimited and no problem is technically unsolvable. So that sounds like very wide, crazy, but it really, when you bring it, bring it back down to the day to day, it's like, what is the compromise we need to do here? It's more like, what is the opportunity to improve and enhance? And Aptera is literally the pinnacle of all of this stuff. Um, so that's the joyous part of the design process. So I don't consider it as compromises until you get into a place where it's like people start asking questions like, why don't you do X, right?
Hmm.
Why don't you add another wheel? Why don't you add 7 more seats? Like there are reasons,
Yeah.
right? So it becomes a paradox a little bit. The ability to hold these seemingly incontrivable things in one hand at the same time and then decide which one takes precedence so you don't muddle the two, but you let one lead. That gives you the authenticity, which upholds your ultimate goal, which is the efficiency factor,
So can
right?
you give me a few examples of things that changed for manufacturing reasons? Or maybe we should go to this, maybe we should talk about CPC Group. I remember you telling me a couple of weeks ago that you were in Italy and I thought you were going there for vacation, but after the CPC announcement came out, I realized, oh, you were probably there for that thing. So
Well, yeah,
that that
I
definitely changed some things about the design, I'm guessing.
it did, and for the good way. None of it was problematic. All of it was opportunistic, right? When you learn the process that is being employed, and you say, "Oh my God, here's an opportunity to exploit it," and you start to challenge, conventions, and you say, "Well, oh, we need to do this for this reason." It's like, well, why can't we do it this way? And then you watch. Engineers are great because you watch like light bulbs go off. For me, you either see gears grinding or light bulbs go off, and you got to partner with those light bulb people, and then everything rises up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, back to the engineering part before I go back to CPC. Design is it's sculpture and art without good engineering. But when you put the engineering with it, then you have a product, you have a mission, you have a way of mass production, and you have change. You have change for the better. And there's nothing better than great engineering. It just brings to life. Good design is good engineering, and then the style part ends up being a benefit, right? So, we like to look at everything and go, oh, that looks, this, or that looks that, but you really have to go to the manufacturing part, the repeatability, and dive into that respect. And then you go, wow, this is magic, right? It's magic, it's math, it's science, but it's also joy and visual beauty. And when you have those in a pure way, that's what's most satisfying, and what I'm most proud of about the product of, that this team has put together, that is the Aptera.
Yeah. I think Aptera is like one of these things that like some people look at and they're like, that is so weird. I can't get on board with it. And then the people who get it are like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's you'll have like kind of people don't have like
Yes.
a mediocre response to it. It's either one or the other.
Yes. And there's opportunity in that. You want that bifurcation of reaction.
Uh-huh. So let's go back to the CPC group. Like, what things had to change because you guys were changing the material?
Well, the material fundamentally didn't really change. It's more the process of that material, right?
Okay.
It's a composite, thing that gets kind of bonded together.
Mm-hmm.
Even the number of we had a target number of like key structural panels.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't change. The shape didn't change. What changed was the opportunity to make it even stronger
Mm-hmm.
and more repeatable in a better time frame,
So,
right?
mm-hmm. Do
So the
you
CPC
know?
process, go
Mhm.
ahead.
Do you know like or are you allowed to tell me what parts of it are the carbon and what parts of it are the fiberglass?
Yeah, and you'll see that in the in the stuff that we're going to share shortly, and then I'll also share in our discussion here. You have the majority of the body and carbon is carbon.
Uh-huh.
Then there's two key components, which are glass SMC, fiberglass
The
SMC.
sides.
Yes, the sides, which incorporate like the shut face of the door,
Mhm.
and they all glue together in a magical way. And it's a little bit like, where do you need the strength?
Mhm.
You don't just throw it at everything. You really like go and analyze where everything needs to be, optimized for.
Mhm.
So the majority of it is coming from these petroleum based plastics, right?
Mhm.
And whether it's carbon or glass. So we've got a really elegant solution for this repeatability, quality, right?
Mhm.
So we won't have the flexibility of metal. Like it won't be constantly changing due to thermal, due to use and everything.
Mhm.
It's going to be very, very rigid. I think you've heard our some of our supporters talk about that exact point.
Right. When we saw the video of it, it looks like the things are made so they like interlock and they only go together a certain way, and so it just like it makes building it very, very repeatable.
Repeatable, but also very quickly repeatable. And once it's together, it doesn't move. It
Yeah.
doesn't move in the traditional sense of alloys and metals and even other plastics. Like this is the foundation. You hang everything on that, and you have high quality. That is the best part of this design process, is that we accelerate towards delta.
Mhm.
The quality and the fidelity of the product only increases. So we have two things. We have a increasing quality of product that's going to be produced, but also in a quicker manner, based on this process that we identified and we've been working with CPC and the network in Italy much longer than we announced it last month or so, but this has been foundational for the last several months.
Okay. All right. Are they also making the doors and the wheel pants?
Their process will be employed for all the closures.
Okay.
Closures being the doors, the hatch, the hood, the wheel pants. Yes.
Okay. So all of that's going to be either SMC or CFSMC.
Not all of it, because there are things that are just traditionally like either plastic or stamped. There's metallic elements where need be. Metal's a wonderful thing. Like we can exploit the efficiency of that. But yeah, they've been instrumental, along with we have such a great collaboration with our engineers and their engineers to elevate the whole thing. And it's a challenge to everyone, because you can't pigeonhole this vehicle and like, we'll just do it this way because that's how we did it on X program. No, this is a new thing, but it's also pulling everyone up to another level.
So the yoke, number one, the yoke has been a somewhat controversial thing. Some people like it, some people are ambivalent to it, and some people hate it. But you guys decided to go with the yoke. I was wondering, why did we decide to go with the yoke? And then two, there's these like two little round things on the yoke. Are those like trackball looking things, or what are those round things?
Okay, so the steering yoke is befitting of this vehicle and its dynamics and its execution. This allows excellent control, excellent ergonomics, and pure visibility to the vision system right in front of the driver. We're currently on generation 4.5 of optimizing the yoke, right?
Okay.
We know the position.
So you've changed the shape of the yoke and stuff? Is that what
it's evolved. It's evolved for sure, especially from Gamma, right? Let's take a moment and talk about Gamma.
Okay,
Gamma, Gamma you don't build Gamma in 2 weeks, right? You execute over time in a very specific way for a very specific mission, which it's fulfilling. And it's awesome, by the way. I don't know if you've seen it in person. Yes.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's also it only represents a moment in time that we've surpassed. Like Gamma proved and allowed us to reflect all of the fidelity of the decisions that were made, but you can't go forever and just say, well, yeah, we're going to do this thing later, right? So we froze something and we put it together, and obviously by the public or even the internal reaction is just like, yeah, this is what I believe in, this so much. This is great. This manifestation lives up to everything that we've been talking about. Uh-oh, did you freeze?
I did indeed freeze, and it threw us off for a little bit, but then we got back on track.
Yoke. Okay. So, the yoke steering in Gamma, it's one of the first kind of manifestations of okay, this is how we want to present this steering yoke to the user, and it fulfilled its function. And now we've already optimized the shape and the control factors to where we're going to be in Delta. You asked the question about what were the two kind of, you call them trackballs, but actually they're two functional buttons. One is for volume control up and down on the left, and the one on the right will be for the horn, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and you'll see that as we release let's say reveal what the Delta production intent is, and we're in a unique place with our execution on the control of the steering yoke, steering column, and the traditional stalks, where we're going to have a hybrid approach. You can see that in Gamma, where we have a single stalk which manages some of the functions that are needed. But eventually we want to move to a stalkless design, which we've been testing, and some of us have been experienced, and it really is superior to your traditional, left stalk, right stalk, and all the multi-functions therein.
So you're getting away from the stalk.
Yes, we'll launch, and our production tends to have a single stalk to handle some of the functions, and then eventually we'll move towards that. And eventually means,
way down the line.
Not way down the line, but way down the line means 12 to 24 months in this case.
So the eyes, well, they look like the eyes of like an animal there on the yoke.
You said that, yeah.
So those are not like trackballs. They're just buttons.
They go, the left one functions as volume up and down, and then the right one functions as horn.
Okay. All right. And then going back to the CPC Group carbon, like that, the previous material was this honeycomb material, right? And this one is a slightly different material, but I think it has like, I've heard that the carbon fiber has a different like sound insulation quality, like it transmits sound a lot more. Do you know anything about that? Or have you noticed that?
Material science wise, I cannot answer that. I do know that we're very sensitive to what is known as NVH.
Okay, what is that?
There, noise, vibration, and harshness.
Okay.
Right. So NVH is something you can think about. A motorcycle has no NVH basically, but a luxury high-end automobile or SUV has a lot of attenuation for that noise, vibration, and harshness. So, we're not a luxury automobile, but we're also not, we're not an open motorcycle where you have wind and buffeting and vibration and sound, things like that. So we're going to be somewhere we're going to be in the right place for this vehicle. And if you think about it, what is one of the big complaints about electric vehicles? Like, oh no, I need to feel the vibration of the internal combustion engine. I've got 700 and X horsepower, whatever. Really? Is that what you need? I mean, so you want feedback from your vehicle. That's one of the things that performance vehicles, that's the attachment to the user, is they have feedback. They have feedback through the body and the G forces. And part of that is there's also an oral feedback where you hear and sense things. I'll put it this way. I used to windsurf, and sometimes it was so cold you had to wear a cap to protect your head and keep it warm in the colder water and colder weather. But the problem was you couldn't feel and hear the wind. So I became very sensitive to that kind of feedback. But to bring it back to your question about the materials, fundamentally there's not a lot of difference for NVH between the two. One is a cord composite, which is a different resin system, and then the other is a forged. And it's magic when you see these presses come together and you see that part come out, and there's very little waste. And then you add in the fact that we're not painting this vehicle. We've taken, I think, it's around about 98% of the typical painting process out of a typical vehicle.
Right.
That is huge for us. That's very efficient, but you're not lacking for the aesthetic result. Like, we're still getting a finish that's like, I like that. That's attractive. So that's my point about NVH. And these are not just buttons. They're not aesthetic. They're functional. In this product, pardon me, you're going to find a lot of things that do double duty or even triple duty, and that they're visible. So the idea, first of all, the interior is not modular per se, but the center console, the center tunnel area wants to be modular exactly for that reason. So those buttons are actually fasteners which hold the modules on. So there's going to be a kind of common carrier. And then the idea is to be able to attain the vehicle with the functions that you need.
Mhm.
And then in the future, there might be things that you want, and you'll be able to remove and replace based on that, availability or that opportunity
Mhm.
to improve or personalize
Mhm.
specifically those functions. I have, in fact, we just talked about this today with our supplier. There's a great drive to kind of hide fasteners, and that drive, it kind of pervades, let's say, the automotive industry. I take a little bit different tact, and we have areas where I don't, if I ever have to create a plastic cover for a fastener, something is not right with the engineering and design.
Hmm.
So if there's an exposed fastener, it should be honest, it should be there for a reason, and it should also offer you the opportunity for some flexibility or modularity. You're going to see a big change in the center console from the concept and even the gamma execution. Everything else about gamma is pretty like, what you see is what you get, and that's nothing's really changed from delta other than the correct speculation on certain areas exterior wise. But really the center console is the one that's going to bring the most kind of refresh to the production design.
What kind of fasteners are you using on the center console? Is it going to be like a screw-in thing or a snap-in thing?
It may be a mixture. I mean, there needs mechanical fastening is still it's like awesome because you can pick the fastener, it's available, it's repeatable, and you can kind of repeatedly attach something.
Mhm.
There are other areas, great use of the word snap, because there are other areas where we're employing exactly that, where there's some snap type systems that allow again for that modularity, but they're not related to the center console per se.
Because I can see a lot of people like kind of 3D printing or designing their own special thing that they snap onto their Aptera console. I kind of see that happening.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so that was it. Thank you so much to Jason for spending his time to answer our questions and tell us about the history of Aptera a little bit in the previous video. There's another thing he mentioned, which I don't know if I got on film, but basically CPC Group is making all the exterior parts, the wheel covers, the doors, the nose cone, all that stuff. So that is another question that we had that Jason was able to answer for us. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Thanks for watching. Thanks to our supporting members, and have a great day, everyone.